My name is Melanie, and I just turned 23 today. Or I should say, this was supposed to be my birthday celebration. Instead, I'm sitting in my car surrounded by hastily packed bags, tears streaming down my face. 2 hours ago, my father looked me straight in the eyes and said those words I'll never forget. "You're nothing but a burden." Then they gave me 30 minutes to pack and leave the house I grew up in. My parents kicked me out on my birthday. What they didn't know was that I still had access to all their financial accounts. If they thought I was just going to disappear, they were wrong. Let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button to find out how I froze their credit cards and watched their perfect life crumble to dust. I grew up in Westfield, a picture-perfect suburb where image is everything. From the outside, we were the ideal American family. My father, Richard Thompson, was the regional director at First National Bank, always dressed in tailored suits with that confident smile that charmed clients and intimidated subordinates. My mother, Diana, built her reputation as one of the top real estate brokers in the county, specializing in luxury properties. Our colonial-style house with its manicured lawn was featured twice in the local Homes of Distinction magazine. But behind our glossy family portraits and Christmas cards was a different reality. To my parents, I wasn't a daughter to love unconditionally. I was an accessory, another status symbol like their German cars and country club membership. When I brought home straight A's, it wasn't celebrated. It was expected. The one time I got a B+ in advanced physics, my father didn't speak to me for a week. Thompsons don't settle for mediocrity was his mantra. Excellence isn't an achievement, Melanie, it's a baseline requirement. My mother was more subtle but equally demanding. She would compare me to the daughters of their friends, particularly those who were accepted to Ivy League schools or who won prestigious competitions. "Jennifer is representing the state in the national debate championship," she would say casually over dinner, "and she still finds time to volunteer 20 hours a week." The unspoken question always hung in the air. Why can't you be more like her? Their marriage wasn't exactly a love story either. They fought constantly, though they were careful to keep their voices down when neighbors or friends were nearby. Money was a frequent source of tension. Despite their impressive incomes, they always seemed to be stretching their finances thin. 50,000 for a kitchen renovation. "Are you insane, Diana?" I once overheard my father shouting. "The Millers just redid theirs for 70. Do you want to be the only executive on the block with outdated appliances?" My mother fired back. This was how they operated. Every purchase, every decision, was filtered through the lens of social comparison and status maintenance, and that approach extended to how they treated me. When I was 16, I wanted to join a summer art program that I was passionate about. My father agreed to pay for it, but only after I promised to also participate in a business leadership camp that would look good on college applications. This pattern of conditional support defined our relationship. They would fund my activities and needs, but always with strings attached, always with the unspoken threat that the money would disappear if I didn't conform to their expectations. College brought a taste of independence, but even then, I remained financially tethered to my parents. They paid my tuition and housing costs, a fact they never let me forget. "Do you know how many students are drowning in debt?" My mother would remind me whenever I expressed an opinion they didn't like. "You should be grateful." And I was grateful at least initially, but I also started to see how money was their primary tool for control. Every time I came home for breaks, there would be questions about my grades, my friends, my career plans. The right answers meant continued support. The wrong ones meant lectures and veiled threats about reconsidering our arrangement. During my junior year, I got a part-time job at a local bank. I was interested in technology, not banking specifically, but the position in their IT department gave me valuable experience and some spending money that wasn't directly from my parents. It was there that I began to understand financial systems from the inside. I learned how credit reports worked, how banks flagged suspicious activities, and how digital security protocols operated. I even helped some customers set up their online banking profiles and troubleshoot technical issues. This knowledge would later prove more valuable than I could have imagined. In my senior year, when my parents upgraded their banking to a new digital platform, they struggled with the technology. "Melanie, you work at a bank. Come show us how to set this up." My father commanded one weekend when I was home. I spent hours helping them create secure accounts, set up automatic payments, and organize their digital banking. What they didn't realize was that in helping them, I gained access to all their login information. I didn't think much of it at the time. They were my parents, after all. Why would I ever need to access their accounts? Little did I know that this access would become my only leverage when they decided I was no longer worth keeping around. After graduating with a degree in information systems, I moved back home temporarily. The plan was to save money for 6 months while looking for jobs in my field. I knew living with my parents again would be challenging, but I underestimated just how suffocating it would feel returning to their rules and expectations as an adult. The conflicts began almost immediately. My father had already mapped out my career trajectory without consulting me. He had connections at several financial institutions and law firms, and expected me to leverage these for an entry-level position that would put me on a proper career path. Banking or law, Melanie. Those are real careers with real futures, he insisted during one of our many arguments. This computer stuff is just a phase. It's not computer stuff, Dad. Information technology is one of the fastest growing fields with the best job security, I countered, growing frustrated at his dismissal of my passion. My mother took his side as usual. Your father knows the business world better than you do, honey. When his friend Jackson offers you an interview at his firm, you should be grateful for the opportunity. The opportunity she referred to was a junior analyst position at an investment firm, where one of my father's golf buddies was a senior partner. When I reluctantly went for the interview, I discovered the job was essentially glorified administrative work with minimal advancement potential unless I pursued an MBA. It paid well, but I would have been miserable. I turned it down, which triggered one of the worst arguments we'd had in years. We didn't pay for your education so you could throw away opportunities, my father roared. Jackson called me personally to say you weren't interested. Do you know how that makes me look? This isn't about how you look, I fired back. It's about my career, my life. My mother's response was more measured but equally cutting. We just want what's best for you, Melanie. You've always been idealistic. Sometimes we need to be practical about these things. 2 weeks later, I accepted a job at a growing tech company. The starting salary was modest, significantly less than what the investment firm had offered, but it was in my field and had excellent growth potential. I was excited about the opportunity to work with emerging technologies and build something meaningful. My parents were less enthusiastic. $38,000 a year. That's what an administrative assistant makes. My father scoffed when I shared the news. And what about benefits retirement plans? My mother added, as if I hadn't considered these factors. Their criticism only intensified as I settled into my new role. They compared me unfavorably to the children of their friends, who had chosen more traditional lucrative careers. Did you hear Julia Matthews is already making 6 figures at her father's law firm? My mother would mention casually. And here's our daughter playing with computers for pocket change, my father would add. The tension at home made it difficult to enjoy my new job. I started staying late at the office just to avoid coming home to their disapproval. One evening, while searching for some tax documents in my father's home office, I stumbled upon something unexpected: a stack of past due notices from credit card companies, letters from their bank regarding overdraft fees, financial statements showing alarming amounts of debt. I was stunned. My parents, who had always projected an image of financial success and stability, were apparently struggling. As I dug deeper, the picture became clearer. They had been living far beyond their means for years, financing their lifestyle with credit cards and home equity loans. The recession had hit my father's bank hard, resulting in smaller bonuses. My mother's real estate business had also suffered as the luxury market cooled. Yet instead of adjusting their lifestyle, they had doubled down on maintaining appearances, accumulating debt at an alarming rate. Designer clothes, luxury vacations, country club memberships, expensive renovations, all to keep up the facade of wealth and success. When I carefully tried to broach the subject with them, suggesting they might want to consult a financial advisor, their reaction was explosive. You went through our private documents, my father demanded, his face flushed with anger. I was looking for my tax forms, I explained. But Dad, these notices are serious. You're falling behind on payments. Our finances are none of your concern, my mother snapped. Focus on your own meager salary and leave the adult matters to us. We've managed our money since before you were born, my father added dismissively. A few temporary setbacks don't mean we need advice from our daughter. After that confrontation, they became more secretive, locking their office and changing the passwords on their computers. But it was too late. I had already seen enough to know they were on the verge of financial collapse, while desperately trying to maintain their perfect image. As my birthday approached, the atmosphere at home grew increasingly tense. My parents were having more frequent arguments behind closed doors. I could hear raised voices late into the night, though they would present a united front in the morning as if nothing had happened. I hoped my birthday might offer a brief respite from the tension, maybe even a chance to reconnect. I couldn't have been more wrong. My 23rd birthday fell on a Friday. I had taken the day off work planning to treat myself to a small celebration at home before going out with friends the next day. My parents hadn't mentioned any plans for my birthday, but this wasn't unusual. They had never been big on celebrations, unless they involved their social circle. Still, I wanted to make the evening special. I picked up a small cake from my favorite bakery, a bottle of wine, and ingredients to make my grandmother's pasta recipe. It wasn't extravagant, but it felt right to create something warm and homemade, a contrast to the cold atmosphere that had settled over our house in recent weeks. I spent the afternoon cooking music, playing softly in the background. For a few hours, I felt peaceful, almost hopeful. Maybe sharing a nice meal would ease some of the tension. Maybe my birthday could be a reset button for our strained relationship. At 6 o'clock, I heard the front door open. My parents usually didn't return home until later, so I was surprised but pleased they might be coming home early for my birthday. I had just finished setting the table complete with candles and a small arrangement of flowers I had bought for myself. "What's all this?" my father asked as they entered the dining room. His tone wasn't curious or pleased. It was irritated. "I made dinner," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Since it's my birthday, I thought we could eat together." My mother glanced at the table, then exchanged a look with my father that I couldn't quite interpret. Something was wrong. Their faces were tight with stress, and they still had their coats on as if they didn't plan to stay. "We had a meeting with the bank today," my father said flatly, ignoring my birthday mention entirely. "We don't have much of an appetite." "Is everything okay?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "No, everything is not okay," my mother snapped. "The bank is questioning some of our recent investments. It's been a very difficult day." I noticed then that my father was holding a glass of whiskey he must have poured immediately upon arriving home. He drained it and poured another before sitting heavily at the table, not in front of the place I had set for him, but at the far end, as if distancing himself. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said cautiously. "But maybe dinner would help. I made Grandma's pasta and got a cake from Bellini's." My father looked at the cake with its "Happy Birthday Melanie" inscription and let out a humorless laugh. A cake. Perfect. Because what this situation really needs is sugar and celebration. My mother remained standing, her arms crossed defensively. "Melanie, this really isn't a good time for whatever this is." "It's not whatever this is," I said, feeling a familiar frustration rising. "It's my birthday dinner. I'm just trying to create something nice for us as a family." "Family," my father repeated, nearly spitting the word. "Do you know what families do, Melanie? They contribute. They support each other. They don't drain resources while giving nothing back." The attack came so suddenly that I felt winded. "What are you talking about? I have a job. I'm saving for my own place. I've been trying to help around here." "Help?" My mother laughed bitterly. "You call that helping, working at that startup for pennies when you could have taken Jackson's offer and been bringing in real money. Real money that could have helped with the situation you're apparently in." I asked, gesturing toward their coats, imagining the difficult meeting they'd just had. It was the wrong thing to say. My father's face darkened dangerously. "So, you do know about our financial situation. Been snooping again, have you?" "I told you weeks ago that I saw some notices. I was concerned." "Concerned enough to mention it again now when we're already at our breaking point." My father stood up abruptly. his chair scraping loudly against the floor. You know what our bank said today? They said we need to cut unnecessary expenses. And looking around, you know what I see? He gestured toward me with his whiskey glass. I see a 23-year-old college graduate still living at home, eating our food, using our electricity, taking hot showers in our bathroom, all while bringing in a salary that wouldn't cover the property tax on this house. Richard, my mother said, but it wasn't clear if she was trying to calm him or encourage him. No, Diana, she should hear this. We've coddled her for too long. He turned back to me, his eyes cold. You're nothing but a burden. You always have been. All the money we poured into your education, and for what? So you could play with computers and make websites. The words hit like physical blows. I had heard criticism from them before, disapproval and disappointment, but never such naked contempt. I never asked for any of that, I said quietly, fighting to keep my voice steady. You chose to pay for my education. You chose the expensive schools and the extracurriculars. That was about your image, not my needs. Listen to her, my mother said with disgust. So ungrateful. Do you know how many sacrifices we made for you? Sacrifices. Something snapped inside me, like the European vacation you took using my college fund. Yes, I know about that too. I saw the transfer records when I was helping Dad with his banking app. You diverted $20,000 from my education fund to pay for first-class tickets and luxury hotels in Italy. My parents looked stunned. Then my father's expression hardened into rage. That's it. I've had enough of this. Diana, we talked about making changes. This is the first one. He pointed at me. You have 30 minutes to pack your essential belongings and get out of this house. I thought he was bluffing. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm deadly serious. 30 minutes. Anything you haven't packed by then stays here. My mother looked momentarily uncertain, then her face hardened to match my father's. He's right, Melanie. This isn't working anymore. You need to stand on your own 2 feet. On my birthday! You're kicking me out on my birthday! My voice rose in disbelief. Consider it our gift to you, my father said coldly. Independence. Isn't that what your generation is always clamoring for? Well, now you have it. 29 minutes left. I stood there frozen for several seconds, waiting for them to take it back to show some sign that this was a terrible joke or a scare tactic. But they just stared at me, my father with contempt, my mother with cold detachment. This was really happening. I was being thrown out of my childhood home on my birthday. I ran upstairs, tears blurring my vision, and began throwing clothes into bags and suitcases. My mind raced frantically. Where would I go? What would I do? My salary barely covered living expenses, let alone first and last month's rent, plus security deposit for an apartment. As I packed, I could hear my parents talking downstairs, their voices rising occasionally. I caught fragments. About time. Should have done this months ago. Dead weight. 28 minutes later, I carried my bags downstairs. The birthday dinner sat untouched on the table, the candles long extinguished. My father stood by the front door checking his watch. 2 minutes to spare, he noted coldly. Always cutting it close, aren't you? My mother stood in the living room doorway, arms crossed. Neither of them moved to help me with my bags. Neither of them showed a hint of regret or sadness. Can I at least take the leftover food? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Take whatever you prepared, my mother said dismissively. We were planning to order in anyway. I packed the pasta into containers, leaving the cake untouched on the table. I couldn't bear to look at those cheerful birthday wishes anymore. At the door, I turned back one last time, hoping against hope that they would relent, that they would call me back. You might want to update your address for mail, my father said instead. We won't be accepting packages for you anymore. And with that, the door closed behind me. I sat in my car in the driveway for several minutes, too shocked to even start the engine. The reality of what had just happened was still sinking in. My own parents had thrown me out like garbage on my birthday. The people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had called me a burden and discarded me without a second thought. I drove aimlessly for a while, tears making it difficult to see the road. Eventually, I parked in a well-lit grocery store lot and called my friend Ashley. Mel, aren't you having your birthday dinner? She answered cheerfully. They kicked me out. I sobbed into the phone. My parents kicked me out of the house. What are you serious? Stay where you are. Text me your location. I'm coming to get you. That night I slept on Ashley's couch surrounded by the bags containing the fragments of my life. I felt hollow, devastated, and completely alone, despite my friend's kindness. My parents' words echoed in my head, "You're nothing but a burden." As I lay awake staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, a strange calm began to replace my despair. They had taken everything from me, my home, my security, my sense of family. But what they didn't know was that I still had something they would soon desperately need access to: their financial accounts. The first few days after being kicked out were a blur of practical problems and emotional turmoil. Ashley insisted I stay with her until I figured out my next steps, an offer I accepted with both gratitude and guilt. "It's no problem," she assured me when I expressed concern about imposing. "My roommate is visiting family for the next 2 weeks, so you can use her room for now." I threw myself into apartment hunting quickly, discovering that my salary wouldn't stretch nearly as far as I'd hoped. The cheapest studios in safe neighborhoods required income 3 times the monthly rent plus security deposits and fees I couldn't afford. The financial reality was grim. "Maybe you could ask your parents for the security deposit at least," Ashley suggested cautiously. "They owe you that much after what they did." "I'm never asking them for anything again," I said firmly. "I'll figure it out on my own." I picked up extra shifts at work and applied for a weekend job at a local coffee shop to supplement my income. Sleep became a luxury as I juggled multiple jobs while continuing my apartment search. Meanwhile, another unpleasant reality emerged. My parents had apparently been busy sharing their version of events with family, friends, and relatives. Melanie moved out very suddenly. My mother wrote in a group email that my cousin forwarded to me. "We're disappointed with her choices lately, but sometimes young adults need to learn independence the hard way." The carefully crafted narrative painted me as irresponsible and ungrateful, while positioning them as patient parents who had reluctantly accepted their daughter's decision to leave the nest. It was a complete inversion of the truth, but entirely in character for them. "Can you believe this?" I asked Ashley, showing her the email. "They're acting like I chose to leave." "That's messed up," she agreed. "Have you thought about telling people what really happened?" I had considered it, but the prospect of engaging in a public battle with my parents was exhausting. Who would people believe anyway? The respected bank executive and real estate broker, or their troubled daughter? As my anger and hurt festered, I found myself thinking more about the one advantage I still had. During a sleepless night about a week after being kicked out, I opened my laptop and accessed my parents' banking information. I had helped them set up their online accounts months earlier, and they had never changed their passwords. With a few keystrokes, I was inside their financial world, and what I saw confirmed my earlier discoveries. They were in serious trouble. Credit card debt across 6 different cards, a second mortgage on the house, investment accounts showing significant losses, and most concerning, several minimum payments had been missed on their primary credit cards. I dug deeper and found a pattern that explained their increasingly erratic behavior. My parents were living almost exclusively on credit at this point. Their actual income was being swallowed by debt payments, leaving them to fund their lifestyle with more borrowing. It was a house of cards on the verge of collapse. And then I saw something that made my blood boil. A transaction from 2 days after they had kicked me out, $3,800 for a weekend getaway at a luxury resort. While I was working double shifts and sleeping on a friend's couch, they were continuing their extravagant spending as if nothing had changed. Something shifted inside me. The hurt child who wanted her parents' approval was replaced by a coldly furious adult who recognized their true nature. They weren't just bad parents. They were bad people living fraudulent lives while discarding anyone who threatened their carefully constructed image. I began researching how credit freezes worked, not to educate myself in the abstract, but to understand exactly how I could use this knowledge. I learned that anyone could report a credit card lost or stolen, which would trigger an immediate freeze on the account while new cards were issued. The process was designed to protect consumers from fraud, but it also created a window where the card couldn't be used. For several days, I wrestled with the ethical implications. Was I really considering financial sabotage against my own parents? But each time I hesitated, I remembered my father's words. You're nothing but a burden. I remembered the cake sitting untouched on the dining table as they ordered me out of the house on my birthday. My research expanded. I studied the legal boundaries carefully. I didn't want to commit fraud or identity theft. I just wanted to create temporary inconvenience, the kind that would force them to confront the precariousness of their financial situation. I discovered that as an authorized user on some of their accounts, I could legally report cards as lost. For others, I could report suspicious activity, which would trigger a security freeze while the bank investigated. None of these actions were permanent or fraudulent if handled correctly. Then I found something even more interesting. My father had listed me as his technical contact for banking issues when I helped him set up the accounts. This meant I could request security holds on suspected unauthorized transactions without triggering identity questions. The plan was taking shape in my mind, becoming more refined with each late-night research session. I would time my actions carefully for maximum impact, targeting the weekend before several major payments were due. I knew from helping them with their financial setup that they had a property tax payment country club, membership renewal, and credit card minimum payments, all clustered in the first week of the month. If their cards were suddenly unavailable during that critical period, they would have no way to make those payments. The final piece fell into place when I discovered a genuinely suspicious pattern in their accounts. Someone, presumably my father, had been making unusual transfers between accounts, moving money in a way that could be flagged as potential money laundering. I wouldn't have to fabricate concerns about their accounts. The questionable activity was already there. One evening, after finishing my coffee shop shift, I sat in my car in the parking lot and made my decision. I would do it. I would freeze their credit cards and force them to face the reality they had been avoiding. It wasn't just about revenge, though. That motivation was certainly present. It was about justice, about consequences for their actions, about puncturing the bubble of privilege that had allowed them to discard their own daughter without a second thought. As I drove back to Ashley's apartment, I felt a strange sense of calm. The plan was set. The timing was chosen. All that remained was execution. On the last Friday of the month, I took a personal day from work. Ashley had left for a weekend trip with her boyfriend, giving me the apartment to myself. I set up my laptop on the kitchen table, surrounded by notes and account information, ready to implement what I had been planning for weeks. I started by logging into my father's primary credit card account. The interface was familiar from when I had helped him set it up. His platinum card was the one he used for most daily expenses, and the one most crucial for the upcoming payments. I navigated to the card services section and selected Report Lost or Stolen Card. The system asked for verification, which I provided using his security questions: date of his mother's birth, his first car, the name of his childhood pet, all information I knew by heart. Your card has been reported lost, the confirmation message read. For your protection, we have placed a security hold on this account. A replacement card will be mailed within 7 to 10 business days. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady as I moved methodically through their accounts. For my mother's primary shopping card, I used a different approach. I reported suspicious activity on 3 recent large transactions. These were legitimate purchases she had made, but they were unusual enough to warrant investigation. Thank you for reporting this concern, the message confirmed. We have temporarily frozen this account while we investigate these transactions. A security specialist will contact you within 1-2 business days. One by one, I worked through their 6 major credit cards. For some, I reported the cards lost. For others, I flagged suspicious activities. For their joint card, I used their online banking app to place a temporary freeze, citing concerns about possible identity theft after noticing unusual login patterns. The entire process took just under 2 hours. By the time I finished, every major credit card they possessed was either frozen, suspended, or flagged for security review. None of them would be usable for at least several days, some for up to 2 weeks. As a final step, I reported concerns about unusual transfer patterns between their checking accounts. This was based on the genuinely suspicious activity I had observed earlier. The bank's fraud department would almost certainly place temporary holds on those accounts pending investigation. I sat back, a strange mixture of emotions washing over me. What I had done wasn't illegal. I hadn't stolen money or committed identity theft. I had simply utilized security features that were designed to protect consumers. But I had no illusions about the impact this would have. Within 48 hours, my parents would discover that their financial lifelines had been severed just before their major payment deadlines. They would face late fees, potential credit score impacts, and the humiliation of having cards declined at restaurants or stores. Most importantly, they would be forced to confront the reality of their financial situation without the cushion of credit. As I closed my laptop, I felt a momentary pang of doubt. Had I gone too far? But then I remembered sitting in my car on my birthday homeless and heartbroken, while they casually discarded 23 years of parenthood. No, I decided. I hadn't gone too far. I had simply ensured that actions had consequences. They had thrown me into financial insecurity without warning or remorse. Now they would have a taste of that same experience. I had one more step to complete. I cleared my browsing history, deleted any records of my access to their accounts, and changed the contact information on their profiles to outdated numbers and email addresses. When the banks tried to reach them about the security concerns, there would be delays in communication extending the period during which their accounts remained frozen. That evening, I treated myself to takeout and a movie, a small celebration of what I had accomplished. As I ate my pad thai and sipped a glass of wine, I realized I was smiling for the first time in weeks. It wasn't happiness exactly. It was something more complex, a feeling of having reclaimed some measure of control in a situation where I had been powerless. Whatever happened next, I had ensured one thing: my parents would remember my birthday this year. Not because they had celebrated it, but because it marked the beginning of their financial reckoning. I didn't have to wait long to see the effects of my actions. The very next day, Saturday afternoon, my phone rang with my father's number. I let it go to voicemail. Then my mother called. Then my father again. I listened to the messages with a detached curiosity. "Melanie, this is your father. Call me immediately. There's been some kind of problem with our bank accounts." My mother's message was less controlled. "What did you do?" "We know it was you, Melanie. Our cards are all being declined. Fix this right now." By Sunday, the tone had shifted from angry demands to something approaching panic. "Please, Melanie, we have payments due tomorrow. The property tax, the club dues. Everything is frozen. They're saying it could take weeks to sort out. Please call us back." I didn't respond to any of the messages. Instead, I monitored the situation through social media and mutual friends. The story unfolded exactly as I had anticipated, but with even more dramatic consequences than I had imagined. The first public sign of trouble came through Instagram. My mother, who usually posted carefully curated images of their perfect life, suddenly went silent. Then one of her friends commented on an older post. "Diana, are you okay? You left so suddenly last night at Marcella's dinner." I learned through Ashley, who heard it from her mother, that my parents' credit cards had been declined while trying to pay for an expensive dinner with friends. They had been forced to borrow cash from other guests to cover their portion of the bill. "People are talking," Ashley reported. "Apparently, your dad made a scene insisting there must be some mistake. The restaurant manager got involved." By Monday, the financial dominoes were falling. Without access to credit or their temporarily frozen checking accounts, my parents missed the property tax payment. They also couldn't make the minimum payments on their credit cards, which triggered late fees and potential rate increases. A cousin texted me, "What's going on with your parents?" Uncle Richard asked my dad for a short-term loan, said there was some banking error that froze all their accounts. I replied with deliberate vagueness, "We aren't in contact right now. I moved out recently." The calls from my parents became increasingly desperate as the week progressed. "Melanie, this is your mother. The bank is saying someone reported suspicious activity on all our accounts from an authorized user. They mentioned your name. Whatever game you're playing, it needs to stop. We have a mortgage payment coming up." I knew the mortgage was their most significant monthly expense, and with their credit frozen and accounts under investigation, they would have no way to make that payment. On Thursday, I received a text from my father that simply read, "We need to talk. This isn't a game anymore. Our financial lives are being destroyed." Only then did I respond with equal simplicity. Funny, that's exactly what you did to me on my birthday. The next call came within minutes. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Melanie. My father's voice had lost its usual commanding tone. He sounded tired, desperate. Yes. I kept my voice neutral. We need your help. Whatever you did to our accounts, you need to undo it. We're facing serious consequences here. The mortgage company called today. That sounds difficult, I replied calmly. Almost as difficult as being suddenly homeless on your birthday with no savings because your parents used your college fund for Italian vacations. Silence on the line. Then, is that what this is about, revenge? I prefer to think of it as a life lesson about consequences. You taught me that actions have consequences, right? That's what all this is. Just consequences. Melanie, please. His voice cracked slightly. We made a mistake. We were under financial pressure. We shouldn't have reacted the way we did. Financial pressure that you created by living beyond your means for years, I pointed out. By maintaining a facade of wealth while drowning in debt. I saw the accounts, Dad. I know exactly how bad it is. Another silence. Then my mother's voice came on the line. They were on speakerphone. What do you want, Melanie? Money and apology? Tell us what it will take to fix this. I don't want your money, I said truthfully. And I don't think you're capable of a genuine apology. What I want is for you to experience exactly what you put me through. Complete financial insecurity. The fear of not knowing where your next rent payment will come from. The humiliation of having to beg friends for help. We're your parents, my mother protested weakly. You gave up that right when you threw me out like garbage. Parents don't do that. My father's voice returned softer now. The banks are saying the security holds could last another week at minimum. We have commitments obligations. I guess you'll have to adjust your lifestyle, I said, echoing the same dismissive tone they had used with me. Cut unnecessary expenses. Isn't that what the bank advised you before you kicked me out? I could hear them whispering to each other. Then my father came back on the line. Can we meet, talk about this face to face? I considered refusing, but some part of me wanted to see them to witness firsthand the impact of what I had done. Coffee shop on Main Street, tomorrow at 10. Just the two of you, no one else. I hung up before they could respond, a strange mixture of satisfaction and apprehension swirling inside me. For the first time since my birthday, I felt like I had regained some control. Tomorrow I would face them not as their discarded daughter, but as someone who held the key to their immediate financial future. As I prepared for bed that night, I checked social media one last time. My mother's friend had posted a photo from a charity event with the caption, Miss Diana and Richard Thompson tonight. Hope everything is okay with them. Everything wasn't okay with them. Their carefully constructed world was crumbling just as they had demolished mine. The difference was that they had done it deliberately cruelly, on a day that should have been a celebration. What I had done was simply remove the financial facade that allowed them to avoid consequences for their actions. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, selecting a corner table that offered privacy while still being in a public space. I ordered a black coffee and waited, rehearsing what I would say, how I would remain calm and composed, no matter what accusations they threw at me. They arrived precisely at 10, looking noticeably different from when I had last seen them. My father's confident stride was gone, replaced by a tense, hurried walk. My mother, always impeccably put together, had dark circles under her eyes, poorly concealed by makeup. Both were dressed more casually than usual, another subtle sign that things had changed. Melanie. My father nodded as they sat down across from me. No hug, no greeting. Just my name acknowledgement that we were indeed related, though the emotional connection seemed severed. Richard, Diana, I replied, using their first names deliberately. You wanted to talk. So talk. My mother's eyes widened slightly at my tone, but she recovered quickly. This has gone far enough, she said, keeping her voice low. Whatever point you were trying to make, you've made it. Now you need to contact the banks and tell them this was all a misunderstanding. Was it a misunderstanding? I asked calmly. I reported suspicious activity on accounts that showed genuinely suspicious patterns. I reported lost cards as an authorized user with legitimate access. Everything I did was within the bounds of the system. You deliberately targeted us, my father hissed. You timed it to cause maximum damage. Yes, I admitted freely. Just like you deliberately threw me out on my birthday to cause maximum hurt. The difference is that what I did was reversible. What you did was not. My mother glanced around nervously, concerned about being overheard. Do you have any idea what this has done to us? We've missed multiple payments. Our credit score has dropped almost 100 points in a week. The mortgage company is threatening foreclosure proceedings. And our friends, my father added bitterly. Do you know how humiliating it was to have our cards declined at Marcella's dinner? To have to borrow cash from people we've known for 20 years? I took a sip of my coffee studying them. It sounds challenging. Almost as challenging as sleeping in your car on your birthday, because your parents decided you were a burden. My mother's face flushed. That was different. How? I asked quietly. We were under tremendous financial pressure, my father explained as if to a child. The bank had just informed us that our investment portfolio had lost significant value. We had just learned that our property taxes were increasing again. We reacted poorly, I admit that, but we were at our breaking point. And yet 2 days later, you spent nearly $4,000 on a weekend getaway, I noted. That doesn't sound like financial pressure to me. That sounds like prioritizing your luxury over your daughter's basic needs. They exchanged a glance, clearly surprised I knew about the resort booking. How do you know about that? My mother asked suspiciously. I know everything about your finances, I said simply. I set up your online banking, remember I've seen it all. The credit card debt, the second mortgage, the investment losses, the money you took from my college fund for your Italian vacation. I know exactly how bad your situation is, and I know it's entirely self-inflicted. My father's expression shifted from anger to something closer to shame. We made mistakes, he admitted reluctantly. Financial mistakes. And yes, we shouldn't have taken that money from your college fund. We intended to replace it. With what money? I asked bluntly. You've been living on credit for years. There was no money to replace it with. My mother's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. Fine. Yes, we've been struggling financially. We've made poor decisions. Is that what you wanted to hear? That your perfect parents are failures? I never thought you were perfect, I said quietly. I just thought you were parents. That you would love me unconditionally, not throw me away when I became inconvenient to your lifestyle. A heavy silence fell over the table. For the first time, I could see real regret in their expressions, not just anger over being caught or inconvenienced. What do you want from us, Melanie? My father finally asked, his voice subdued. What will it take to resolve this situation? I had thought carefully about this question, knowing they would eventually ask it. 3 things, I said firmly. First, a genuine acknowledgement of what you did, and a real apology, not just because you need something from me. Second, you need to correct the narrative you've been spreading about me choosing to move out. Tell everyone the truth. And third, you need to make a realistic plan to live within your actual means, not the imaginary wealth you've been projecting. They looked at each other, seemingly surprised by my demands. That's it, my mother asked cautiously. No money, no demand to move back in. I don't want your money, and I definitely don't want to live with you again, I said honestly. What I want is acknowledgement of the harm you caused, and some assurance that you've learned something from this experience. My father cleared his throat. And if we do these things, you'll help with the bank accounts. I'll contact them today and explain that the security concerns were a misunderstanding. The freezes should be lifted within 48 hours. But understand this. I leaned forward, making direct eye contact with each of them. This is your only chance. If you ever try to hurt me again financially or emotionally, I won't be so merciful next time. My mother looked like she wanted to object to my characterization of my actions as merciful, but my father placed a restraining hand on her arm. We understand, he said soberly. And we are sorry, Melanie. What we did was inexcusable. We were wrong. Completely wrong, my mother added, her voice catching slightly. I've barely slept since that night. Not just because of the financial issues, but because I keep seeing your face when we told you to leave. No parent should ever do that to their child. I studied them carefully, trying to gauge the sincerity of their words. There seemed to be real remorse there, though I remained cautious. Years of emotional manipulation had taught me to be wary of sudden changes of heart. As for the narrative, my father continued, we'll set it straight. We've already had to explain to several friends that we're having financial difficulties. It's not much of a stretch to admit the full truth about what happened with you. And the financial planning, I pressed. My father sighed heavily. We've been forced to confront that already. Without access to credit this past week, we've had to make some hard choices. Cancel club memberships, postpone renovations, list some property for sale. It's been educational. We should have done it years ago, my mother admitted quietly, before things got this bad. I nodded, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Part of me was satisfied that they had experienced consequences for their actions. Another part felt a surprising twinge of sympathy for them. They were flawed people who had made terrible choices, both financial and parental, but they were still human. I'll call the banks today, I promised, finishing my coffee. But our relationship has changed permanently. I'm not your little girl anymore to be controlled or discarded at will. I'm an adult who deserves basic respect. We understand, my father said, and for once I believed him. As I stood to leave, my mother reached out hesitantly. Melanie, would it be possible? Could we perhaps have dinner sometime when things settle down, just to talk? I considered her request. Maybe. Not right away, I need time. She nodded, accepting this boundary. Of course, whenever you're ready. Walking out of the coffee shop, I felt lighter somehow. The revenge I had executed had served its purpose, not just in making them suffer as I had suffered, but in forcing a confrontation that might otherwise never have happened. The truth had finally been spoken aloud, the façade cracked beyond repair. I wasn't naive enough to think everything was fixed. Real healing would take time if it was possible at all. But for the first time since that devastating birthday night, I felt something close to hope. Not for a return to what was, but for the possibility of something new, something healthier built on honesty instead of appearances. As I had promised, I contacted the banks that day and resolved the security holds. Within 2 days, my parents had access to their accounts again, though the damage to their credit scores and financial reputation would take much longer to repair. In the weeks that followed, they kept their word. They sent a group email to friends and family admitting that they had asked me to leave against my wishes and that they regretted their actions deeply. My father called to let me know they had consulted a financial advisor and were developing a structured plan to address their debt and live within their means. Small steps, perhaps, but significant ones. They were learning, as I had been forced to learn, that actions have consequences and that genuine relationships require honesty, not performance. As for me, with Ashley's help, I found a small but affordable apartment and focused on building my career in IT. The extra job at the coffee shop allowed me to save enough for basic furniture and necessities. It was a modest beginning, but it was mine, built on my own terms. 3 months after that confrontational coffee shop meeting, I agreed to have dinner with my parents. It was awkward, tentative, but also more authentic than any interaction we had shared in years. They talked about their ongoing financial struggles with unexpected candor. I shared stories about my new job and apartment without fear of judgment. We were building something new from the ashes of what had been destroyed on my birthday. Not a traditional parent-child relationship, but a connection between adults who were learning to respect each other's boundaries and truths. The experience taught me powerful lessons about money power and authentic living. I learned that financial weapons cut both ways, that revenge might feel satisfying, but healing requires more than just inflicting equal pain. Most importantly, I discovered my own resilience, my capacity to rebuild from nothing and to transform pain into growth. I don't regret freezing their credit cards and watching their perfect facade crumble. That action was necessary to break through years of pretense and manipulation. But I'm grateful that the story didn't end with destruction. That beyond the revenge was the possibility of reconstruction of a relationship built on truth rather than appearance. Life isn't perfect now. My parents still struggle with old habits sometimes. I still carry scars from that birthday night. But we're all living more honestly, more authentically, and ultimately more freely than we did in that beautiful house with its carefully maintained illusions. Sometimes the greatest gift is having your carefully constructed world fall apart, forcing you to build something real from the pieces. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a betrayal? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of healing and transformation. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most authentic beginnings.